Chapter 1484 Dwell and Learn. Chapter 1484 Dwell and Learn author's note. Unedited, Chapter Gustav responded by initiating a projection that filled the room with data, a visual symphony of numbers, symbols, and cryptic words, interspersed with images showing an ashy trail streaking across space. The key to finding Humbad lies in deciphering this, Gustav explained, his finger tracing the lines of data as they floated holographically in midair. He paused at two recurring terms that seemed to anchor the chaos of information: stagnant siderous void and premonition. Gustav continued, "The stagnant siderous void is where I believe planet Humbad is. The problem is that according to what I know, it also is a place that doesn't exist in any known location within the universe." So what of the premonition? Are they linked with the 5 premonitions? Eldris inquired. I don't think so. I think this premonition represents something else. Representation for the location or key to accessing the stagnant siderous void. Meanwhile, back on Earth, in a facility orbiting high above the planet's surface, a different scene unfolded. A floating prison, specifically designed for holding aliens, was a marvel of modern technology. Its exterior was a composite of dark metals and energy fields, rotating slowly with the Earth's orbit, its presence a silent sentinel in the cold vacuum of space. Inside, the environment was starkly minimalist, functional to its core. The cells were designed not with bars, but with energy fields humming with a low, almost imperceptible buzz. At the center of one such cell floated a being, its form nebulous and shifting, contained by the force of the high-tech restraints. Elevra stood outside the energy field, her figure bathed in the soft blue light that emanated from the cell's containment system. Her hair fluttered as her commanding presence contrasted sharply with the dim, utilitarian surroundings. Who is the leader of the Gustavo Alliance? And where is their base located? Elevra asked, her voice firm and devoid of any warmth. It was a question she had posed several times, each iteration as pointed as the last. The being inside the cell, its form coalescing into a more humanoid appearance, replied with a tone that was both weary and defiant. The answer remains the same as it has. It's Gustav. He leads and they follow. Elevra's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of irritation passing over her features. I know that Gustav has nothing to do with this. Tell me the truth, who pulls the strings? She countered smoothly. The seal was so strong, so impenetrable, that not even the might of the ancient executioners could break it on their own. My birth, my very existence, was the key to creating the first breach. Ria, always quick to grasp the implications, leaned forward. So, your existence alone weakened the seal? But how does that relate to the premonitions we've been encountering? Falco sighed, the weight of his destiny apparent in his posture. The premonitions, they are not random cosmic events. They are rituals, each carefully planned and executed to weaken the seal further. And when the 5th premonition appears, the seal will be completely destroyed. Eldris, who was starting to understand the situation, interjected. You're saying that the appearances of these ancient executioners' body parts during the premonitions are sacrifices? Falco nodded grimly. Exactly. Each part of the executioners that manifests and is then sacrificed contributes to the weakening of the seal. Those are body parts that will be lost to them forever, but that is a testament to the seal's strength, considering that the ancient executioners are among the 2nd most powerful beings within my father's realm. The silence within the spacecraft was palpable, but it only lasted for a few seconds as Falco cut through the silence with the remaining part of his tale. So much so that they haven't been conscious in hundreds of thousands of years because they serve only one purpose. The revelation stirred a mix of horror and fascination among the crew. The notion that such powerful entities were being used as mere tools in a larger scheme was unsettling. Ria, trying to understand the broader implications, asked, What happens if the seal is broken completely? What does your father hope to achieve? Falco looked at each of them, his gaze lingering as if measuring the impact of his next words. If the seal breaks, it will release something bound since the dawn of this universe's memory. Something my father believes should not have been sealed away, or should I say someone? He turned to face Gustav. Someone you specifically sealed away. What? Gustav? How could Gustav have sealed someone away from so long ago? Rhea and Eldris voiced out their confusion. Because he was there. He is the Outworldly. I finally understand what the Outworldly is, what the title entails. Gustav, do you even know who you are? I can take a wild guess from everything you've mentioned, but even I don't believe it myself. Gustav shook his head slightly. He is telling the truth, though. That is why you play a key part in stopping this. Endrick voiced from the side. So what exactly happens when the seal is gone? Rhea questioned again. The Overseer will return. All beings of the higher planes will have a foothold in ours again, and believe me, it isn't a sight you want to live to see. Falco shook his head. Then we must make sure the final premonition doesn't happen. We can't allow this seal to break. Gustav responded. Falco's expression softened, appreciating Gustav's resolve. I thought you might say that, and am with you. While I was born to facilitate my father's plans, my journey with you all, it has shown me a different path. One that I choose to follow, standing against the darkness my father seeks to unleash. Eldris, moved by Falco's declaration, placed a supportive hand on his shoulder. Then it settled. Well, stand together, as we always have. And Falco, we're not just fighting beside you out of duty, but out of belief in you, in the choice you've made to defy what was written for you. The group's resolve hardened, fortified by the bonds they had formed through countless battles and shared burdens. But how do we do that? We couldn't stop the premonitions before. How are we going to stop them now? Rhea's question broke the silence. Well, come up with something. I need to complete 2 quests first, Gustav responded while a system panel appeared before him. Quests, duration, progress, 59/100%. Time elapsed, less than 4 years. Duration, progress, 94/100%. Time elapsed, less than 4 years. I wonder how the system calculates the difference between power. Gustav thought about how he could use Kohelia to swallow anything up, and how he also had cosmic superiority as another leverage over anyone, no matter how powerful. Remembering his special abilities made him wonder the aspect of strength the system calculated. What does it matter? You've made much progress, the system chipped in. Whatever. From the looks of things, I would probably be able to close in that 6% in less than a year's time. The real issue is Dimension 6 in Planet Humbad. Gustav thought internally with a look of perplexity. We have to find Planet Humbad, Gustav announced. The statement dropped like a meteor in the midst of the group, eliciting a mix of shock and confusion. Rhea, as always, was the first to respond. Gustav, Planet Humbad was destroyed thousands of years ago. How are we supposed to find something that doesn't exist? Eldris and Falco were just as confused, except Endrick, whose expression remained unfazed. That's where you're wrong, Endrick interjected, his voice steady and sure. The destruction of Humbad is a widely accepted fact, but it's a facade, a cover-up for much deeper truths hidden by the Slarkovs themselves. Gustav nodded at Endrick's clarification, appreciating the support. Exactly. And within Humbad and what is known as Dimension 6 lies something crucial for handling our current predicament with the seal. We must locate it. The revelation that Humbad still existed, possibly holding the keys to the answers they desperately needed, was beyond their comprehension. The story of Planet Humbad was one that had been told since forever to the masses on Earth. They had grown up with it, and so had their fathers and their fathers' fathers. It was hard to swallow that it had been a generational lie, but it slowly began to sink in. But what about Angie? She's still trapped within the dark plane. Do we give up on rescuing her? Rhea questioned with a mix of worry and frustration. I haven't forgotten about Angie. I more than anyone want to rescue her. But consider this. If they've kept her alive all this time, they must still need her. That means she's relatively safe for now. Our main focus must shift to finding Humbad. It might be our best chance to save her and everyone else. Falco, absorbing the strategy laid out by Gustav, added his perspective. Gustav is right. Angie has some kind of usefulness to my father, and that is more so now than ever since he can't control me. If Gustav says finding Humbad could help us, then I trust his judgment. Eldris chimed in at that moment. The question remains, how do we find a planet that seemed to have vanished from existence? Where do we even begin? Chapter 1485. It is epic. Chapter 1485. It is epic. Author's note. Unedited. Chapter Gustav's confusion deepened into concern. In my name? That's absurd. I have no connection to this so-called alliance. Right now, we are deep into deciphering data related to finding planet Humbad. We have enough on our plate. E nodded, understanding the complexity of Gustav's predicament. I get it, man, but you need to know, your reputation is taking a hit. Every planet they take over in your name makes it worse. The Intergalactic Alliance will have more of a reason to condemn you. Gustav leaned back, rubbing his temples in frustration. That's a reputation I'll have to endure for now, he said resignedly, until we resolve the current situation. Maybe you could consider going after them? E suggested. Say I don't know. We really don't have much time left, Gustav answered. The transmission continued, the weight of the universe's eyes on them growing heavier by the moment. E shifted his attention to Falco, who had been quiet in the background. And Falco, E added, his tone softening, your earthly father misses you. Any plans of coming to say hi soon? E seemed to have already been briefed on everything that transpired as he spoke with a knowing tone. I miss him too, but... Falco replied, his voice tinged with a mix of nostalgia and determination. This takes priority at the moment. Maybe you could help me send a message. Tell him I'm fine, he added. E smiled slightly, a brief respite from the dire news he had delivered. I will. Stay safe, all of you. I will try my best to stabilize things over here. The holographic image flickered as the transmission prepared to end. Keep us updated, E, Gustav said firmly. E nodded before the transmission ended. After the transmission ended, Gustav went back to facing the display of data relating to the warp demolator and stagnant Siderus void. Endrick turned to Gustav with a look of earnest inquiry. You've been poring over this data in the last few days. What have you uncovered? Any insights that could help us navigate to Humbad? The rest leaned in, anticipation hanging palpable in the air. They all respected Gustav's intellect, which had proven on countless occasions to be second to none. His ability to discern patterns and meanings where others saw only chaos was almost legendary. Gustav, who had been staring intently at the holographic symbols and equations, finally turned to face them. His expression was one of cautious intrigue, hinting at the depth of his discoveries. I have a multitude of theories, he began slowly, his voice measured, but there is one that resonates the most, is perhaps the most radical. The crew shifted, their interest peaked as they prepared to delve into one of Gustav's quintessential revelations. Gustav continued, remember I mentioned that the stagnant Siderus void is not any known place within the universe. But what if it doesn't exist yet? A murmur of surprise and skepticism ran through the group, with Falco furrowing his brows in confusion. Doesn't exist yet? How? Gustav replied by pointing back to the display where the symbol for premonition floated next to the term stagnant Siderus void. We've been interpreting premonition as a warning or a vision of impending events. But what if in this context, it doesn't just mean foresight? What if it's actually a clue indicating the future? Eldris, trying to keep up, chimed in. Are you saying that the stagnant Citrus void is a place that doesn't exist yet, but will exist in the future? Author's note: check out my new novel, Evo's Legacy, Rise of the Strongest System Bearer. Everything that happens is the will of our Lord God Gustav. Don't be a misguided sapien. Join the cause of our Lord, the being voiced once more like a fanatic. If you spit one more bullshit again, I will obliterate you, Elevra threatened. The being's form shimmered, its fear palpable even through the containment field. You think you are powerful, but your abilities are nothing but mere flickers of shadows compared to our God Gustav, the shield behind which the true powers convene. Elevra stepped closer to the field, her presence imposing. Your cooperation is your only path to lesser confinement. Help us and we can help you. Who is behind this? Our Lord Gustav. The being sounded like a brainwashed fanatic. Elevra fixed her intense gaze upon the nebulous form of the imprisoned being. This is getting repetitive. Tell me the truth. Who is behind the Gustavo alliance? She demanded, her voice echoing slightly off the smooth walls, imbued with an authority that brooked no defiance. The being inside the cell, its form shimmering with a yellow light, replied with a fervor that bordered on fanaticism. Gustav is our God, our personal savior. There is no behind, for he is the forefront, the guiding light of our mission. Elevra's eyes narrowed, her patience wearing thin. Spare me your zealotry. I need names, structures. Who orchestrates the moves? Does Gustav even know of the existence of you lots? The being seemed to curl within itself, a flicker of hesitation passing through its ethereal form. You seek shadows in a well-lit room. Gustav is the epitome, the culmination of our faith and actions. We are his to command, his to deploy as he sees fit on the chessboard of this universe. Unsatisfied with the circular answers, Elevra shifted tactics. Then tell me about your aims for attacking Earth. What was the objective? We were to bring Earth under our dominion, as we have done with other planets. The being responded, its voice a mixture of pride and regret. But we underestimated Earth's strength. Our unit thought ourselves too mighty, even though we were warned. It matters not. Where we have failed, others will succeed. They shall carry out the grand design. Elevra pressed on, her tone sharpening like a blade. And what is this grand design? What is the endgame of your so-called Gustavo alliance? The room tensed as the being paused, its brightness dimming as if drawing an energy for a significant revelation. The endgame, it began, its voice now a hollow echo of its former vigor, is to support our Lord and Savior Gustav in his ultimate mission, to bring an end to the existence of the universe. The words hung heavy in the air, charged with the magnitude of their implications. Elevra felt a chill run down her spine as Gustav's face flashed in her mind. To end the universe, she repeated, disbelief threading through her words. Gustav would never do that. These fools must have higher-ups that pursue such a goal. Such madness. Elevra spat. It is not madness, but enlightenment, the being insisted. To end is to begin anew. Our Lord Gustav sees the flaws in the fabric of reality, the errors in the cosmos code. He wishes to reset it, to create something purer, free from the chaos that currently defines it. Doesn't sound like him at all, so now I'm assured that these fools are acting on their own. I need to tell Elevra's mind pieced together the information with makeshift scenarios. You speak of apocalypse as if it's a renewal, she countered sharply. That's destruction on an unimaginable scale. Lives, planets, entire galaxies erased? For what? A chance for your little group to play God? She knew Gustav wasn't responsible for what they had in mind, but she was nonetheless bothered because they obviously had plans to set in motion. What are beings but brief sparks in the eternal darkness? Gustav offers a return to the singularity from whence all arose, a noble sacrifice, a return to purity. Elevra felt a surge of anger and helplessness, her fists clenching at her sides. This was no mere terrorist organization or a tyrannical regime seeking dominion. They were dealing with a cult with existential destruction as their creed. "You're delusional, but your beliefs are your own," Elevra finally said, her voice cold as the void outside. "But know this, when the real Gustav eventually set his sights on you fools, everything will come to an end. Pray you don't make a stupid decision before then, because erasure would be the least of your concerns." With those final words, Elevra turned sharply on her heel and exited the containment area. Her steps were measured, but inside her thoughts were a maelstrom. The silence of space was absolute, broken only by the muffled sound of the spacecraft's engines and the soft beeps of its operating systems that only echoed within an enclosed bubble. Gustav and the others gathered around the control room before a console. A holographic display casted a blue glow across their faces as an intergalactic transmission with E seemed to be playing out. "Gustav, we've just repelled another attack by the Gustavo Alliance. They're becoming increasingly troublesome," he voiced with a disturbed tone. Gustav's brow furrowed in confusion as he responded, "The Gustavo Alliance? I've never even come across a single one of them, but I've heard of some weird groups using my name." E sighed, his face weary from the burdens of what transpired on Earth. "Do you know, they've also been conquering planets in your name. They're spreading the belief across the universe that you are their leader, their so-called god." Chapter 1480, Sixth the Deed. Chapter 1480, Sixth the Deed, Author's Note. Unedited, Chapter Damn. Maybe I should have used that one. E nearly face-palmed. "I still do not understand what you're talking about, General. Why is the girl a problem exactly? She isn't who you came here to find." E decided to stop mentioning relatives or any other excuse and outright played coy. "True, she isn't the one I am looking for." General Reyna arrived before E once more and stared into his eyes briefly. "But maybe she has connections to him." Immediately after adding, she turned to the side and started walking toward Cersei. "You don't mind if I ask her a few questions, do you?" General Reyna emitted an intimidating presence while approaching. Without a warrant or anything that advocates a crime. Isn't that against her rights?" E voiced with a tone that slightly hinted at trepidation. "Just a few friendly, simple questions. Nothing much. Unless there is something to hide." General Reyna turned slightly to shoot E a glance. "Haha. Knock yourself out, General." E laughed wryly. "I don't like where this is going." E screamed internally. General Reyna proceeded to bring out a holographic tab which displayed a picture of Gustav. "Have you seen this person before?" she questioned with a keen gaze. Bang, bang, boom. Powerful ripples spread across the air due to an ongoing battle between a trio. Fwish, after images could be spotted in the skies as they engaged one another powerfully. Blasts often rang out, and despite being distant from the surface, the icy terrain would occasionally split and shatter from the residual energy. No normal person could witness the ongoing battle due to their unparalleled speed as they bolted across the skies. However, on closer look, it was a 2 versus 1 battle. The figure in the middle was continuously deflecting blows from the other two and appeared to be doing it rather easily. One of the two had his arms covered in rocks as he repeatedly threw fierce jabs at the figure in the middle. Bang, bang, bang. The figure in between swayed his hands causally, slapping the fists away before they made contact. His arms looked like they were moving 1,000,000 times in just 1 second. Bang! He slapped the one covered in rocks away, sending him hurling across the air. Bam! 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 He slammed into the icy surface below, sliding across it and forming wide crevices due to the force of the attack. Meanwhile, the other one, whose attack had also been repeatedly getting deflected, now had to face the figure with dark hair alone. "Thanks for doing this, Sir Jack," he voiced in gratitude before opening his eyes. "Not a problem." I was starting to get bored here anyways, Jack responded with a smile as he stared at the multiple twinkling colors in the eyes of the 75 youngster with silver hair before him. Jack's smile suddenly vanished the moment the world before him lost all color. He felt the space around him bending and contrasting in a very eerie manner, while the youngster across from him was the only being with color. Impressive. Jack's smile returned as he praised. Not impressive enough if you're still smiling. Eldris' silver hair floated as he raised his index finger, which had a swirling mass of numerous colors above it. Waving it forward slightly, the swirling mass sped towards Jack, who responded by thrusting a palm forward. Fwoosh, a star-patterned construct materialized into existence, fighting against the colorless domain as it flickered occasionally with colors. Like a switch turning off and on, the construct collided with the swirling mass of multiple colors, causing a mass of blackness to form upon merging. "Thank you," Eldris smiled while spreading his palms apart. "Pa." The moment he clasped his hands together, an incredibly immense suction force was generated from the dark mass. With such powerful suction force, even the earth should have been swallowed up in an instant. However, this suction force only seemed to affect Jack, who found himself unable to fight against it. "This is ridiculous," he voiced internally as the black swirling mass pulled him into its center and formed restraints that held him in place. "Now," Eldris yelled. Boom! A loud explosion rang out from underneath as the icy terrain ruptured and a figure sped upwards with such immense force that it tore a line across the sky. A tempest accompanied by a flaming mountain of ice and volcanic magma trailed across the air with unbridled intensity. Behind it was Rhea, who stomped onto the bottom, sending it spiraling at the restrained Jack. Boom! A deafening collision reverberated across the vicinity, bringing with it harsh winds that blew everything away, Rhea and Eldris included. Shock waves spread across the air, turning miles of the icy terrain beneath to water. Everyone within a 500-mile radius could feel the earth quaking intensely, like it was about to give way. The battle was being fought in the sky, and yet it had greatly affected the surface beneath. "Did we get him?" Rhea voiced from below. "Being the strongest mixed blood in existence, you know the answer to that." Eldris smiled wryly. Not long after, Jack appeared in the distance, where the skies were completely void of clouds. The last blast had blown them all away. He floated in place, practically unscathed except for a few cuts on his clothes. TCH, why is he so overpowered? Rhea felt like all his months of seclusion had been thrown down the drain. "Ha ha ha, come on, Rhea. Even Gustav would be unable to win," Eldris reminded him from the side. "But he's not even injured. I trained for so long and am still so weak," Rhea voiced with a tone of defeat. Jack's figure suddenly vanished, reappearing before Rhea in the next instant. "You're not weak." Jack raised his palm to show Rhea that it was scalded. "You're just up against me. Some alphas would be unable to cause me even the tiniest bit of damage, so don't sell yourself short." Jack patted Rhea's shoulder. "Really?" Rhea's face suddenly lit up in excitement. "Of course. I say you're powerful enough to contend with a betranked mixed blood, and being that powerful at such a young age means that you will be stronger than me when you're my age." Jack smiled while floating upwards. "I'll give you an A for effort. At least you made me use a pretty high level of strength to not only get out of that restraint, but also block your attack." Jack turned around to fly away after revealing. "Thank you." Rhea yelled, but he was already gone. Praise from the world's strongest. "Today is not a bad day," Eldris descended while speaking. "How did you do that trap thing?" Rhea questioned with a hint of curiosity. "Oh, that. I just bound his energy to my attack and used it to lure his essence and merge him into it. No one should be able to get out of that restraint so long as they attack it instead of evading," Eldris explained. "But he got out of it," Rhea said with a tone of confoundment. "He is Jack Sherwin." Within EES apartment, General Reyna stared down at Cersei, who kept answering all her questions with no. So you've never seen Gustav Crimson before. You don't know who he is, and you have no connection to him? General Reyna voiced with her tone rising every second. Cersei shook her head in response. General, you said this was going to be friendly and brief. Would you please stop harassing the poor girl? He voiced from the side with a tone of annoyance. General Reyna wore a smile and stood upright before turning around. I have checked. There is nothing, Gohan voiced from the side. No records, no birth certificate, no database whatsoever on this young girl. It's like she just appeared out of thin air, he added. How intriguing. Coming into existence around the same period Gustav Crimson is suspected to be on Earth. What an interesting coincidence, indeed. General Reyna gazed at E briefly to note his reaction. E was quiet, seemingly racking his brain on how to respond to her, since someone that doesn't exist is currently in here. I guess it wouldn't be what I'd do to her now, would it? General Reyna suddenly reached out at that moment to grab Cersei. General Reyna, what are you doing? He yelled while strutting forward, but before he could get close, Gohan threw a glowing icy cube towards the floor before him. Thryn, a triangular barrier of light, suddenly surrounded trapping him in place. You use spatial abilities, right? That will keep you from interfering for a while. General Reyna smiled while watching bang the walls of the barrier constantly. He tried to conjure a vortex, but to no avail. General Reyna drove a fist into Sarah's belly at that moment, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Cersei, let her go, you witch. He voiced out in anguish. Just stay in there and don't interfere. General Reyna turned to face Cersei once more before raising her. I'm only dealing with someone who shouldn't exist. Immediately after saying that, she threw another punch forward. Enough. Chapter 1487, Longer Maintenance. Chapter 1487, Longer Maintenance. Author's note. Unedited chapter, it was an intricate dance, each aspect needing to fall into perfect harmony with the others. Gustav visualized a triangle, each point representing one of the three elements. They needed to converge at the center, creating a unified force. The yellow shade of Gustav's body deepened to a low shade of gold. He felt himself drawing closer to the goal, the connection between his soul, mind, and body growing stronger. Every fiber of his being thrummed with energy, a resonance that felt both alien and deeply familiar. It was as if he were reaching out to touch the fabric of the universe itself. Stark watched with a mixture of awe and frustration. His own attempts at the transformation had yielded no results, and he could only admire Gustav's tenacity and progress. You're almost there, Stark murmured, more to himself than to Gustav. After what felt like an eternity, but was only a few hours, Gustav entered a peak-focused state. His breathing slowed, his heart rate dropped, and his mind cleared of all distractions. In this heightened state, the alignment he sought finally clicked into place. It was like the chime of a bell, clear and pure, resonating through his very being. Suddenly, Gustav's body transformed. His skin turned a radiant gold, glowing with an otherworldly light. He felt an unfathomable and indescribable connection to realms beyond human understanding. It was as if he were one with the cosmos, able to perceive and interact with the very essence of existence. For that brief moment, everything made sense. Gustav's awareness expanded, touching upon the infinite possibilities and knowledge that lay beyond the mortal plane. He felt invincible, omnipotent, and yet profoundly at peace. It was a state of perfect unity, the culmination of his efforts and determination. Is this? It feels like I have transcended mortality. Gustav had never felt anything like this before, but the moment was fleeting. No sooner had he achieved this transcendence than it began to slip away. Gustav felt a wave of immense fatigue wash over him, his golden form flickering before reverting to its original state. He gasped, his body trembling with exhaustion. The transformation had drained him, leaving him weakened. "It's gone," Gustav muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Stark stepped forward, concern etched on his face. "Are you okay? You looked like you were there, just for a second." "I was," Gustav replied, his voice strained, "but I couldn't hold on to it." Stark placed a hand on Gustav's shoulder. "You've practically done it. You've made more progress than I have. Just rest for a bit and try again." Gustav nodded, taking deep breaths to steady himself. He couldn't give up now, not when he had come so far. The brief taste of the 3-in-1 golden body had only fueled his determination. He needed to achieve that state again, to master it. He closed his eyes and resumed his meditation, focusing on the alignment of his soul, mind, and body. Hours passed as he cycled through moments of near transformation and intense fatigue. Each attempt brought him closer, but maintaining the golden state eluded him. He visualized the triangle, the convergence point, the harmony he needed to achieve. Stark watched, his own frustrations momentarily forgotten as he saw Gustav's determination. He knew that if anyone could achieve and master this transformation, it was Gustav. Another hour passed, and Gustav felt the familiar resonance building within him. His body began to glow again, the yellow deepening to gold. He focused all his willpower on maintaining the alignment, on keeping his soul, mind, and body in perfect harmony. For a brief moment, he achieved the transformation again. His body shone with a radiant gold, the connection to the cosmos once more within his grasp. But the strain was immense, the energy required to maintain the state overwhelming. Gustav felt himself slipping, the golden glow fading as exhaustion took hold. Achieving it seems to be more easier than holding on to it. His voice was a mere whisper as he slumped to the ground. Stark knelt beside him, offering support. "You're doing great, Gustav. Just rest for a bit and try again." Gustav nodded, too tired to speak. After some time, Gustav took a deep breath, gathering his strength. "I need to find a way to channel the energy more efficiently. The trials, they were about testing my limits, pushing me to adapt. I need to use that adaptability to sustain the transformation." Stark nodded, understanding dawning. "You think you can do it?" "I have to try," Gustav replied, determination hardening his features. With renewed focus, Gustav resumed his meditation. He visualized the energy flowing through him, seeking ways to channel it more effectively. He remembered the strain of the trials, the need to adapt and overcome. Slowly, he began to adjust his approach, finding a rhythm that felt more sustainable. The yellow glow returned, deepening to gold. Gustav felt the alignment once more, the connection to the cosmos within his reach. However, no matter how much he tried, maintaining the 3-in-1 golden body seemed like an impossible task. Gustav sat on the cold, stone floor of the temple, his body trembling with fatigue, but his spirit unbroken. Suddenly, a familiar glow filled the room, and Miss Amy's projection appeared before them. Her long, grayish hair flowed like a river, and her eyes sparkled with a mixture of pride and warmth. "Well done, Gustav," Miss Amy said, her voice gentle yet powerful. "You have made remarkable progress." Gustav looked up with a face full of fatigue. "Miss Amy, I managed to achieve it, but I can't seem to maintain it for more than a second." Miss Amy nodded, her expression understanding. The 3-in-1 golden body is not something that can be easily attained or maintained. Even achieving it for a few milliseconds is a tremendous feat. It takes an incredible amount of energy and focus. But how can it be useful if I can't hold it for longer? Gustav asked, his frustration evident. "The fact that you can activate it at all is a testament to your strength and potential," Miss Amy explained. "You are a cosmic superior being, Gustav. This is why you were able to achieve it within a couple of weeks. For anyone else, it would take years of dedicated training." Stark, who had been silently listening, let out a sigh of relief and frustration. So, it's not something I can achieve anytime soon? Miss Amy turned her gaze to Stark, her eyes softening. Your efforts are commendable, but this training was originally built for Gustav to participate in alone. I don't think anyone else will be able to match his pace. Stark nodded, accepting her words. All right, I understand. Gustav still looked troubled. But how do I improve on maintaining it for longer? Miss Amy smiled gently. You must continue to activate it as many times as possible. The more you use it, the longer you will be able to sustain the transformation. It will take time, but with your determination, I have no doubt you will get it. Gustav took a deep breath. Thank you, Miss Amy. They'll keep working on it. For the next few hours, Gustav resumed his meditation, focusing on the alignment of his soul, mind, and body. Each attempt brought him closer to maintaining the golden state for longer periods. The brief moments of success fueled his determination, even as the strain of the process took its toll. Gustav's focus intensified with each session, and the intervals of golden transformation grew longer. The process was grueling, but he could feel himself getting more in tune with the cosmic energy that flowed through him. He wanted to test it out to see the capabilities of the golden body, but he still needed it to be maintained for longer first. As the days passed, Gustav began to notice subtle changes in his perception. The alignment of his soul, mind, and body felt more natural, as if they were becoming a single entity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue across the temple, Gustav felt a surge of clarity. He sat cross-legged, his breathing steady and his mind calm. He visualized the triangle once more, each point representing an essential aspect of his being. With a deep breath, he focused on the convergence point, the moment of unity that would trigger the transformation. The yellow glow began to spread across his body, deepening into a rich shade of gold. Gustav concentrated on maintaining the flow of energy, adjusting and adapting as needed. For over 2 minutes, he held the golden state, his body radiating with an otherworldly light. The connection was strong, the alignment stable. He could feel the potential within him, the power that came with the 3 in one golden body. Stark watched in awe, sensing that Gustav had finally found the key to maintaining the transformation for longer. He remained silent, not wanting to disrupt the moment. As the golden glow persisted, Gustav felt a profound sense of peace and empowerment. He could perceive orbital bodies in space as his mind merged with constellations and stars like he was a part of them. It almost feels like I can be everywhere at once. What is this power? Gustav felt like taking it further and letting himself go. Chapter 1488 Power of the Golden Body. Chapter 1488 Power of the Golden Body. Author's Note. Unedited, chapter Gustav's perception expanded, his mind traveling across the vast expanse of space. He could see stars and galaxies, their light twinkling like distant beacons. He felt the pull of distant worlds, each one a point of interest in the endless cosmos. His further pushed the spread of his being. Then his mind focused on a familiar sight. The blue and green orb of Earth floated before him, its beauty magnified by his enhanced senses. Gustav's heart swelled with a mix of awe and nostalgia. He could see the continents, the oceans, and the swirling clouds that blanketed the planet. It was a sight that filled him with both pride and longing. "I can see Earth from here," Gustav whispered to himself, astonished by the clarity and detail of his vision. But he wasn't content to merely observe. He wanted to feel the earth beneath his feet, to walk its lands once more. With a determined thought, he extended his astral form towards the planet, his consciousness traveling at a speed that defied comprehension. In an instant, he found himself hovering above Earth's surface, his astral form shimmering like a golden phantom. Gustav descended slowly, his feet touching down on familiar soil. He stood in the heart of a bustling city, its streets filled with people going about their daily lives. But no one noticed him. He was invisible, his presence undetectable to those around him. He marveled at the sights and sounds of the city, the hustle and bustle of everyday life continuing without interruption. He walked through the crowded streets, his astral form gliding effortlessly among the people. He saw children playing in a park, their laughter filling the air. He passed by a street musician, the melody of their guitar blending with the city's ambient noise. Every detail was vivid, every sound crystal clear. As he wandered, Gustav felt a deep connection to the world he had once called home. He moved through neighborhoods, each one filled with memories. He passed by old cafes and even saw the MBO Tower. Gustav wondered what more the three in one golden body could do and tried to tap into other abilities. However, the strain was still immense, and eventually, Gustav felt himself slipping again. He instantly disconnected from Earth as the golden glow faded with his body reverting to its original state. He gasped for breath in exhaustion. "You did it," Stark said in admiration. "You held it for longer this time." Earth in EES apartment, the activities of the city outside provided a comforting background to the intimate setting inside. The room was warmly lit, casting a golden glow that highlighted the smooth, modern furnishings and the personal touches that made it feel like home. Elevra lay relaxed in EES arms, her head resting on his chest. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from her, a side she only showed to him. "We need to figure out what to do about Rhea," Elevra said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "I know they're using him as bait to lure Gustav out." He nodded, his hand gently stroking her hair. "Yeah, it's clear as day. But this whole narrative about Gustav being a villain has gone on long enough. We have to clear his name." Elevra looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "How?" "The entire universe believes he's a planet destroyer and the leader of the Gustavo Alliance." EES' gaze was steady. "I've documented all of Gustav's exploits since he went on the run. Every planet he's saved, every act of heroism. We need to get this information out there. But more importantly, we need to figure out who's really running the Gustavo Alliance and bring back credible evidence that Gustav was never involved." Elevra sighed with her brow furrowing. "That won't be easy. He'll have to travel off-planet to track them down. And—" She hesitated, her usual confidence wavering. "I don't want to be so far from you." He chuckled, a warm, reassuring sound. "There's that fragile side showing," he teased gently. "The side most people never get to see." Elevra pouted, a rare and endearing sight. "Don't make fun of me." He pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "I'm not making fun of you. I'm just reminding you that it's okay for you to not act like you're Superman all the time. It's our job to make sure our friends are okay, and that includes Gustav and Rhea." She smiled softly, snuggling closer to him. "You're right." Their conversation shifted as their proximity deepened the connection between them. EES' hand moved from her hair to her cheek, tilting her face up so their eyes met. There was an unspoken understanding in his gaze, a promise of support and love. Slowly, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, a tender exploration that quickly grew more passionate. Elevra responded eagerly, her arms wrapping around his neck as she deepened the kiss. EES' hands roamed her back, pulling her even closer as their lips moved in perfect sync. Elevra's fingers threaded through his bushy hair, anchoring herself to him as the world outside faded away. The only thing that mattered was the here and now. They broke apart for a moment, both breathing heavily. He looked into her eyes, his voice a whisper. "You're so beautiful." She smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "You're beautiful, too. That makes me feel girly. It's okay for you to not act like Superman all the time." She repeated words to him, causing both of them to chuckle in response. Their lips met again, more urgently this time. Es hands found the hem of her shirt, sliding under the fabric to touch her warm skin. Elevra gasped softly at the sensation, her body arching into his touch. The kiss deepened, a fiery exchange that left them both breathless. He guided her gently onto her back, his body covering hers as they continued to kiss. The world outside ceased to exist, leaving only the two of them in their bubble of love and desire. Es lips left hers, trailing kisses down her neck and collarbone. Elevra moaned softly, her hands gripping his shoulders as he worshipped her with his mouth. Every touch, every kiss was a promise of his love and devotion. Author's note: you'll know what happens next, Shushing Face, so let's skip this. 1 hour later, eventually, they lay tangled together, unclad, underneath the sheets. Their heavy breathing slowed as the intensity ebbed. East held Elevra close, his fingers gently tracing patterns on her skin. Elevra nestled against him, her head resting on his chest once more. "Well, find a way," he murmured, his voice filled with determination. "Well, clear Gustav's name and save Rhea." Elevra nodded, her eyes drifting closed. "I know we will. Together." He kissed the top of her head, a smile playing on his lips. Together. Back on planet Argon, the surroundings had returned to their serene state. The sky was a stunning gradient of purples and blues. The air was crisp and fragrant, and the landscape was a verdant paradise. Gustav and Stark sat on a grassy knoll, surrounded by a feast brought by Silithiel. The spread was vast, featuring succulent meats, vibrant fruits, and a variety of dishes that delighted the senses. Silithiel stood nearby, her presence adding to the surreal atmosphere. "Miss Amy would always speak so fondly of you, Lord Gustav," she said with a soft smile. "She was incredibly proud of your achievements, and always knew you would surpass any challenge set before you." Gustav paused, a piece of fruit halfway to his mouth. "She talked about me that much?" "All the time," Silithiel confirmed. "She even mentioned some incidents, and one of them was when your little thumb—" "Stop! I think you've said enough," Gustav voiced with a wry smile. How could she tell them about that? "Damn you, Miss Amy," Gustav cursed internally. Stark, wiping his mouth with a cloth, leaned back with a contented sigh. "This food is incredible. I've never tasted anything like it." Gustav nodded in agreement, but his thoughts were elsewhere. After finishing their meal, Gustav turned to Silithiel. "Do you have any idea where Miss Amy is? Like her real physical form?" Silithiel shook her head. "Our Creator said she would reveal her location to you when the time was right. She instructed me to make sure you rest tonight. She will contact you when she's ready." Gustav let out a sigh of resignation. "All right. Thank you, Silithiel." As night fell, Gustav and Stark found themselves a comfortable spot to rest. The sky above was a display of twinkling stars, and the air was cool and refreshing. Gustav lay on his back, staring up at the heavens, while Stark was already snoring softly beside him. Achieving the 3 in one golden body is a major feat. You should be proud of yourself. It's just as rare as achieving cosmic superiority. The system's voice echoed in his mind. Chapter 1489, Warp Demolator Fragment. Chapter 1489, Warp Demolator Fragment. Author's note. Unedited. Chapter Gustav closed his eyes, feeling the exhaustion in his bones. "I know, but I can't shake this feeling of unease. It's like something is brewing." "What makes you feel that way?" the system inquired. Gustav took a deep breath, trying to pinpoint the source of his anxiety. "I don't know. Maybe it's because nothing ever goes as planned. Every time I achieve something significant, it feels like a storm is waiting just around the corner." "That is understandable, goofball, given your experiences. But you've always risen to the challenge, haven't you?" Gustav nodded slightly. Yes, but this feels different. There's a weight to it. It might be because you have a year left to complete your 5-year quest, the system suggested. Gustav sighed deeply. I hope that's all it is, and nothing more. I can't shake this feeling. As he pondered, Stark approached. Hey, man, Stark began, settling down beside him. How are you holding up with the whole Angie situation? Gustav's gaze darkened, and he took a deep breath. I don't know, man. She's trapped in a dimension that threatens our plane, and it's governed by Falco's father. Stark's eyes widened. Falco's father? Gustav nodded gently. Yes, Falco's father is the lord of that dimension. Angie is still trapped there, even though we freed Falco, and it's been a nightmare trying to figure out how to get her back. Stark shook his head in disbelief. I can't even imagine. How did you free Falco? Gustav recounted the events with a somber tone. We visited Zelio's tower to gather information on how to get there so we can rescue both of them, but then things went in an entirely different route than we planned. Stark listened intently, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock and sympathy. He hadn't heard about the MBO run-ins with the half-dark and white beings since they kept it under the wraps, but he was incredibly shocked that she could go toe-to-toe with the strongest mixed blood. And do you have plans to rescue her yet? Gustav clenched his fists, frustration evident in his voice. As much as I want to. It's not something I can just snap my fingers and be done with it. I have to put a lot of thought into everything I do, but I will definitely get her back one day. Stark placed a reassuring hand on Gustav's shoulder. You know I'll help in any way I can. Just say the word. Gustav managed a small, grateful smile. Thanks, Stark. I appreciate it. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of their conversation hanging in the air. Finally, Stark broke the silence. So, tell me more about what's been happening. What else have you faced since we last saw each other? Gustav leaned back, staring at the sky again. Where do I even begin? The night wore on as Gustav recounted more tales of his battles, his struggles, and the moments of victory that kept him going. Stark listened, absorbing every word, his admiration for Gustav growing with each story. They talked until the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, the sky shifting from deep blues to vibrant pinks and oranges. They were both powerful mixed bloods, so they could stay days without a wink of sleep. Gustav and Stark had a quick breakfast, exchanging a few words before Salethiel arrived to escort Gustav to another part of the structure for meditation. As they walked, Salethiel guided Gustav through a series of winding paths. The air grew cooler, and the environment changed to one of quiet tranquility. They arrived at a secluded area nestled within a grove of trees. The ground was covered in soft, moss-like grass, and a gentle stream flowed nearby, its water shimmering with a blue glow. The atmosphere was peaceful, almost sacred, providing an ideal environment for deep meditation. Miss Amy's projection materialized before Gustav. Good morning, kiddo, she greeted him. Morning, Miss Amy, Gustav replied, settling down cross-legged on the mossy ground. What exactly is the end goal here? I know achieving the 3-in-1 golden body is important, but the warp demolator has vanished. There's no chance of me getting to the stagnant, Siderus void now. Miss Amy smiled softly. There's a chance, Gustav. That is why you needed to achieve the 3-in-1 golden body. It's not over yet. Gustav's brow furrowed in curiosity. What do you mean? Follow me, Miss Amy instructed, her projection moving toward a hidden path partially obscured by the dense foliage. Gustav rose and followed her with an expression of curiosity. The hidden path led to a concealed door embedded within a rocky outcrop. Miss Amy's projection passed through it effortlessly, and Gustav pushed it open, stepping into a dimly lit chamber. As his eyes adjusted to the low light, he saw what appeared to be a containment field in the center of the room. Within it was a swirling, grayish sandy substance that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Gustav's eyes widened in shock. Is that warp demolator? Miss Amy nodded. Yes, a fragment of it. I contained it here for you. This is your key to reaching the stagnant, siderous void. The strange entity I met in the past, Miss Amy added, told me that you would need this, so I created it. Gustav's disbelief was visible. You created this for me? Miss Amy nodded. Yes, it was a challenging task, but the entity's instructions were clear. I knew I had to prepare you for this moment. Gustav's mind raced. Everything was beginning to make sense. So, that's why the NID directed me here. Precisely, Miss Amy said. But you still need to train your 3-in-1 golden body to maintain its form longer. Only then will you be ready to use the warp demolator. Gustav approached the containment field, examining the warp demolator fragment. The energy it radiated was proof that it was definitely the warp demolator. Unlike the usual size that would be swallowing planets up, this was just around the size of a building. Gustav nodded, understanding the gravity of the task before him. So, I need to master maintaining the 3-in-1 golden body for longer. Precisely, Miss Amy confirmed. Take your time, Gustav. Gustav took a deep breath and sat down before the containment field, closing his eyes to begin his meditation. The serene environment, coupled with the gentle sound of the nearby stream, helped him focus. He began the process of aligning his soul, mental form, and body, striving to achieve the perfect balance required for the 3-in-1 golden body. Hours passed as Gustav meditated, his body occasionally glowing with a faint golden hue. Each time he neared the transformation, he felt the intense connection to realms beyond human understanding, but maintaining it for more than 3 minutes proved challenging. Nevertheless, he persevered, driven by the need to reach the stagnant, siderous void and uncover the answers he sought. As dusk settled over Argonne, Gustav felt a surge of energy within him. The golden glow enveloped his body, and this time he held on to it for a few moments longer than before. Miss Amy's projection appeared once more, her expression proud. You're making significant progress, Gustav. Keep going. Gustav opened his eyes, the golden glow fading as he exhaled deeply. Thank you, Miss Amy. I'll keep at it until I've mastered it. The projection smiled warmly. I know you will. Rest now and regain your strength. Tomorrow is another day. Gustav nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment despite the challenges ahead. The night passed uneventfully, and as dawn broke, Gustav rose with renewed determination. He continued his meditation, each session bringing him closer to maintaining the golden form for longer periods. The serene environment and Miss Amy's guidance were invaluable. By midday, Gustav had managed to sustain the 3-in-1 golden body for several minutes, feeling the immense power coursing through him. Falco, Endrick, and Eldris worked diligently on Gustav's spacecraft. They were on a planet known as Verdantia, an emerald gem nestled in the far reaches of galaxies. Verdantia was a breathtaking world, teeming with life. Towering trees with leaves like shimmering jade, vines that glowed with an inner light, and flowers with petals that pulsed softly in the evening air. The inhabitants, the Verdantians, were a peaceful and wise race of plant people, their bodies adorned with vibrant foliage and bark-like skin. Hand me the plasma wrench, Eldris said to Falco with his hand outstretched. He looked up at the majestic canopies above, their soft light casting a greenish hue over everything. This place is incredible, isn't it? Falco, with his hands deep inside an engine compartment, nodded. It sure is. Almost makes you forget why we're here. He glanced over at Endrick, who was securing some wiring near the ship's hull. How's it coming along, Endrick? Endrick frowned, concentrating on his task. Slow but steady. We need the ship in top condition if we're going to make it to wherever Rhea is being held. Eldris sat back on his haunches, taking a moment to appreciate the lush surroundings. I've been thinking about that. Rhea could be back on Earth, or worse, he could be with the Alliance. Chapter 1490 Battle with the Gustavo Alliance. Chapter 1490 Battle with the Gustavo Alliance. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Eldris sat back on his haunches, taking a moment to appreciate the lush surroundings. I've been thinking about that. Rhea could be back on Earth, or worse, he could be with the Alliance. Falco stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. Yeah, and finding the Alliance location is next to impossible. Only their leaders and core members know where it is. Endrick paused, considering their options. If we assume the worst and Rhea is with the Alliance, we'll need to be smart about this. Even if we do discover the location, it's not somewhere we can just barge into. Falco looked thoughtful. Even Gustav wouldn't barge in there thoughtlessly, but he probably will have knowledge about the place. If only we can find someone who can give us inside information. Endrick leaned back in his seat, his brow furrowed in thought. We had to destroy the homing system in the Alliance spacecraft. If we didn't, they would have tracked us by now. Falco nodded, his expression tense. Good call. But that would have really helped us locate the Alliance too. Would be flying blind. Eldris turned to face them. We need to find another way. We can't just be flying out there aimlessly. Falco drummed his fingers on the armrest, frustration evident in his eyes. What if we inform Gustav? He needs to know about Rhea. Endrick shook his head firmly. No, we can't do that. The Alliance captured Rhea to draw him out. If we tell him, he'll come rushing in, and that's exactly what they want. We have to keep this from him, no matter what. A tense silence settled over the cockpit as they contemplated their next move. Eldris broke the silence, his voice thoughtful. Maybe returning to Earth is our best bet. We can regroup, gather more resources, and plan our next move more carefully. Falco frowned. But what about Rhea? We can't just leave him there. Endrick placed a reassuring hand on Falco's shoulder. We're not abandoning him. We're just making sure we're prepared. We need to be smart about this. If we go in unprepared, we'll be captured too, and then we're no good to Rhea or anyone else. Falco sighed, his shoulders sagging. You're right. I just hate the thought of leaving him there. Eldris nodded. We all do, but we need to think long-term. If we're going to save Rhea, we need to do it right. They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Eldris finally spoke, his voice resolute. Once the repairs are completed, we head back to Earth. We'll come up with a solid plan and gather any resources we need. Find out all the information needed about the Alliance. Once we're ready, we'll go after Rhea and bring him back. Falco and Endrick nodded in agreement, their resolve strengthening. The day passed slowly as they continued repairs on Gustav's ship with the help of the Verdantians. Their plant-based technology seemed to seamlessly integrate with the spacecraft. As dawn broke on Verdantia, the planet awoke to a serene and beautiful morning. The vibrant plant life swayed gently with the breeze, and the bright sun cast a red glow over the verdant landscape. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of blooming vegetation and the sound of chirping creatures. Elder Thalon, a Verdantian, approached them, his eyes filled with wisdom and understanding. May the roots of Verdantia guide you on your journey. Falco handed over a bunch of credits. Thank you, Elder Thalon. Thalon smiled gently. Go now, and may you find what you seek. They boarded the spacecraft, the engines beaming to life. As they lifted off, they looked back at the beautiful planet to engrave its look into their mind before final departure. Suddenly, the sky began to darken unnaturally. The red hues of the morning were replaced by an eerie twilight. Endrick, Eldris, and Falco exchanged worried glances, their senses heightened by the sudden shift. What's happening? Eldris muttered, his multicolored eyes scanning the sky. Without warning, figures in dark robes descended from the sky, their forms silhouetted against the ominous clouds. They hovered above the ground with masks obscuring their faces. A loud, booming voice echoed across the landscape, amplified by some unseen force. "In the name of the Gustavo Alliance, we declare a takeover of Verdantia," the voice announced, sending shockwaves through the verdant fields. Endrick's eyes widened in shock. The Gustavo Alliance? Here? Falco clenched his fists, dark energy crackling around him. "Such rubbish. We have to interfere." Ealdris nodded, his eyes glowing with the colors of the universe. "Let's do this." The three friends stepped off the spacecraft, ready to confront the intruders. The robed figures descended, their feet touching the ground as they spread out in a menacing formation. Each figure exuded an aura of power, unleashing their supernatural abilities as they spread about the surroundings. A couple of the robed figures landed before the trio. One was a tall being with shimmering scales. The figure's mask bore a star-shaped pattern, and its eyes glowed with a violet light. They don't seem like ordinary folks," the figure said internally as he noticed the strange aura all three of them exuded. The fact that they were also not native species rang a warning in his mind, but nevertheless they were the Gustavo Alliance. Anyone knew not to mess with them. "Surrender now, and your lives will be spared," the figure declared. Endrick stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "I'll offer you the same opportunity." At least I gave you lots of chance." To hush, all of the figures charged forward in the next moment. Endrick's telekinetic abilities surged to life, a wave of force emanating from him and crashing into the robed figures. Several were thrown backward, smashing into trees and plant life behind. Falco launched himself into the fray, dark matter swirling around him like a storm. He conjured weapons of pure darkness, slicing through the air with deadly precision. He cut them down one after the other, painting the surroundings with blood as he mercilessly engaged them. One of the robed figures, a creature with wings and razor-sharp talons, met Falco's attack head-on, their own dark energy clashing with his. "You dare compete with my darkness?" Falco's eyes gleamed in annoyance as a burst of darkness radiated from his form. The eyes of the creature widened in utter disbelief as he turned around to flee. Unfortunately for him, before he could get far, Falco's darkness consumed him. In another area, Ealdris' eyes glowed as he absorbed the colors from the surroundings, his body radiating with power. He targeted a group of robed figures, binding them with beams of multicolored light. The figures struggled against the bindings, their own abilities trying to break free. The leader of the robed figures, the multi-limbed being, retaliated with a powerful blast of energy. Endrick countered with a telekinetic shield, the force of the impact causing the ground to tremble. "That's it," Endrick taunted. The robed leader's eyes narrowed. "You will regret defying the Gustavo Alliance. For people who claim to be under my brother's banner, you are extremely weak." Blink, Endrick vanished and reappeared behind the leader. With a thrust forward, a surge of telekinesis radiated with immense vigor, ramming into the back of the leader. Bam! He spat out blood as he spiraled across the air, and half his robe got ripped. How did he? I thought his power was just telekinesis? The leader was in disbelief. Endrick blinked again, appearing right above him and snapping his fingers. "Moondrop." The moment these words left his lips, the leader felt an insurmountable pressure. The robed figure unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one powerful enough to level a building, and aimed them upwards. This helped him have enough time to evade its area of concentration as a burst of energy zoomed him towards the side at very quick pace. Boom! The moon drop descended on the surroundings, creating a huge crater as a burst of wind spread across the surroundings. The battle raged on, each side unleashing their full power. Endrick's telekinetic abilities allowed him to manipulate the environment, lifting boulders and hurling them at the robed figures. He wasn't just facing the leader alone, He was still rendering assistance in defeating the others, since there were a lot of them. From a swirling vortex of luminescent energy high above the planet, a figure watched the fierce battle unfold below. The portal, shimmering with hues of violet and emerald, framed the scene like a celestial window. Through it, the cloaked observer could see the struggle between Falco, Endrick, Ealdris, and the relentless forces of the Gustavo Alliance. The figure's eyes, hidden beneath the shadow of a dark hood, gleamed with admiration and anticipation. The powerful trio fought with a fluidity and ferocity that was mesmerizing. His lips curled into a smile beneath the mask. "That's our Lord's brother and his friends." "This will be exciting," he murmured, his voice a low, reverent whisper. Chapter 1491, The Mysterious Interference. Chapter 1491, The Mysterious Interference. Author's Note. Unedited. Chapter The Figure's eyes, hidden beneath the shadow of a dark hood, gleamed with admiration and anticipation. The powerful trio fought with a fluidity and ferocity that was mesmerizing. Falco, enveloped in an aura of darkness, wielded his abilities with brutal precision. His dark matter constructs materialized and dissipated with lethal efficiency, crushing his enemies with ease. Endrick, his form pulsing with telekinetic energy, manipulated the battlefield with invisible force, sending adversaries crashing into one another with mere gestures. Ealdris, with his eyes reflecting all the colors of the universe, moved like a phantom, his abilities warping reality around him, weakening enemy attacks and binding foes in ethereal chains. The observer's lips curled into a smile beneath the mask. "That's our Lord's brother and his friends." "This will be exciting," he murmured, his voice a low, reverent whisper. Clad in robes as dark as the void of space, the figure stepped to the edge of the portal. The fabric of his attire seemed to absorb the light around it, giving him an almost spectral appearance. He took a deep breath, feeling the thrill of the impending confrontation surge through him. With a swift, decisive movement, he leaped from the portal, his body slicing through the air like a falling star. As he descended, the wind whipped past him, his robes billowing out like wings. The ground rushed up to meet him at an alarming speed, but he remained unfazed. His descent was graceful yet enthralling. The trio continued their onslaught, unaware of the approaching figure. Falco conjured a massive, shadowy fist that slammed into the ground, sending shockwaves through the ranks of their enemies. Endrick, his hands glowing with telekinetic power, lifted a cluster of boulders and hurled them at an advancing group of foes, scattering them like leaves in a storm. Ealdris, moving with supernatural speed, darted between enemies, delivering precise, debilitating strikes that left his opponents incapacitated. As the dark-cloaked figure neared the surface, he extended his arms with electric energy crackling around his fingertips. He landed with a resounding impact, a shockwave of power radiating from the point of contact. The ground beneath him cracked and buckled, and the members of the Gustavo Alliance nearest to his landing site were thrown off their feet. Falco was the first to notice the new arrival. He turned, his eyes narrowing as he took in the figure's appearance. "Who are you?" he demanded with a heavy tone. The figure straightened, his dark robes settling around him like a shroud. "Someone who finds great interest in the capabilities of our Lord's companions," he replied with a measured and calm tone. "You fight well, but let's see how you fare against a true challenge. Let's see if you three are truly worthy of being companions with our great Lord." "Dash, it's King Darkus," whispers could be heard in the background from the Alliance members. "Who the hell is that?" Falco's eyes squinted in annoyance. "I don't know, but we really don't need another enemy right now, especially not a mysterious one," Ealdris stated. The figure's chuckles sent chills across the surroundings. "I am not here as your enemy, not directly," he said. "But consider this a test, a demonstration of your true strength." With that, electric arcs began to fizzle around the figure, causing the surroundings to buzz in an electric manner. Every single metal in the surroundings began to surge as well, as electric arcs swam around them, reacting to this figure. "I will retract the troops if you take me down," he stated with a smirk underneath his mask. "Get lost." Falco surged forward as dark tendrils phased out of him. However, before he could get close, a paralyzing wave of lightning arcs burst forth from the figure, flying out in every direction. "Dodge!" Endrick yelled to the others while blinking. Why? Falco created a block of dark matter around him, but to his surprise, the electricity phased through and hit him squarely in the chest. Bam! Falco got sent flying across the air as his body vibrated intensely from the hit. Hundreds of millions of volts permeated his body, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. Endrick had appeared hundreds of feet above the air, while Eldris had managed to make it past the range of the attack. I may have forgotten to add that my power phases through any physical restraint. The figure spoke with a tone of confidence. Endrick seemed to have sensed this earlier, which was why he yelled for everyone to dodge instead of trying to guard against it. Unfortunately, Falco was unaware that this was going to be the case. Why? The figure sent an electric whip at Endrick in midair, causing it to phase through a portal and appear directly around Endrick's neck. The electric whip was about to completely wrap around Endrick's throat when he blinked again. He appeared directly behind the figure while closing his fist. His telekinesis wrapped around the figure, trapping him in place while Eldris shot forward with intensity, aiming a well-placed uppercut at his jaw. Bang! The moment Eldris made contact, a jolt of electricity surged through his body, sending him flying as well. Half of the figure's mask broke, while Eldris rammed into multiple trees as he felt his innards getting electrocuted. "Oops!" the figure muttered while blood leaked out the side of his face. "Eldris!" Endrick yelled while proceeding to raise the figure high up with telekinesis and ram him into the ground. Bam! Endrick didn't stop there. He pushed the figure forward, slamming him into multiple trees and dragging him across the place with telekinesis. All of a sudden, the figure's eyes emitted a purplish glow as the electric arcs around his body turned purple. Endrick had an ominous feeling and blinked at this moment, arriving high up in the sky. A streak of purple lightning suddenly emerged from the clouds, aiming for him. Pa! Endrick snapped his finger, forming stacks of multiple telekinetic barriers before himself. The purple lightning phased through them all, but he managed to blink once more, evading its strike before it got to him. The figure on the ground, who had gotten free from Endrick's telekinetic bind, jumped backwards upon noticing that Eldris and Falco had been freed from the paralyzing effect. "Impressive," he mused while deflecting a particularly powerful strike from Falco. With a surge of power, the figure expanded a glow of purple energy across the surroundings, enveloping the trio in a swirling vortex of lightning arcs. The lightning arcs didn't harm them, but trapped them in place momentarily. "Very well," he said, a note of grudging respect in his voice. "You three are indeed formidable. You pass, and as a token of good faith, this planet will not be taken today." With a final, powerful burst of purplish energy, the figure leaped back into the air. Every single Gustavo Alliance member that was still alive followed suit. The portal above shimmered and closed after they all disappeared through it. Falco, Endrick, and Eldris stood amidst the wreckage with heavy breaths. "Who was that?" Eldris asked as his eyes glowed with residual power. Endrick shook his head. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I have a feeling we'll be seeing him again." Back on planet Argon, Gustav stood in the training chamber Miss Amy had created for him. Miss Amy's projection hovered nearby, watching over him with a calm expression. "Remember, Gustav, everything is amplified in the 3-in-1 golden body state. When you tap into a singular ability, its feats will be astronomical." Gustav nodded, with his body beginning to glow with a faint yellow hue. "It's just like old times, Miss Amy. Only this time you're not here physically." Miss Amy's projection smiled warmly. "Indeed, but my guidance is always with you, no matter the distance." Gustav focused, his body gradually shifting from yellow to a low shade of gold. He felt a surge of power coursing through him, each of his abilities straining against their usual limits. The sensation was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. He clenched his fists, feeling the raw energy pulsing within him. As he tried to maintain the state, the golden hue intensified, his skin almost glowing with a metallic sheen. He could feel the connection between his soul, mental form, and body solidifying. The room around him seemed to blur as his perception expanded beyond its usual boundaries. For a brief moment he felt invincible, capable of bending more than just reality to his will. Minutes later, the golden glow dimmed, and Gustav's body reverted to its original form. He staggered as fatigue washed over him like a tidal wave. He dropped to one knee, breathing heavily. "Well done, Gustav!" Miss Amy's voice echoed through the chamber. "You held the state longer this time. You're getting closer." Gustav wiped the sweat from his brow with a determined look in his eyes. "It's still not enough, Miss Amy. I need to maintain it longer." Miss Amy's projection moved close with a look of encouragement. "You will, but you've already made incredible progress, as expected." Gustav rose to his feet as his muscles ached from the strain. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Miss Amy, where are you physically? Why can't I sense you?" Chapter 1492, Level 4. Chapter 1492, Level 4, Author's Note. Do not unlock this, Endrick pointed out, is not just any location. Nereus Sector serves as a nexus for black market exchanges. Crime rates are astronomical, around 90%, and it operates under a constant state of lawlessness. The rotating model displayed sections of the sector, each a hub of various illicit activities. Markets brimming with stolen artifacts, underground fighting rings, and dens offering every imaginable vice, painted a vivid picture of controlled chaos. Gustav folded his arms, his gaze locked on the floating model. A place like this might just tear itself apart without any outside help. Letting Karis wreak havoc there might seem like a self-solving problem. As he voiced this thought, the injured guard, who had been silently observing, interjected weakly but with conviction. "I understand the temptation to look the other way, but you must consider Nereus is also a ground for trafficking innocent children from across the universe. They're sold to the highest bidder, living lives of despair. If Karis unleashes that mineral's power there, those children will suffer most." The room fell silent, the moral weight of the guard's words settling among them. Ria turned to look at Gustav with a troubled expression. "We can't just turn our backs on them." Falco nodded in agreement. "We need to think this through. Although we could leave it to them to clean up their mess, there's no guarantee they'd get to her before the deed is done. Innocents, especially children, shouldn't pay the price for our indecision." Gustav sighed, rubbing his temples as he contemplated their options. "We have two choices: intervene and potentially save lives at great risk to ourselves, or stay our course and let Nereus deal with its own demons, including Karis. If we do decide to intervene, we'll need to do so now and fast, so we can stay on course and get to the location before the warp demolator appears," Endrick voiced. "How long will it take us to get to Nereus Sector?" Gustav questioned their ship's artificial intelligence. "Less than 4 days of interstellar travel. Technically, we should be back on course in about a week," Endrick pointed out. "Are we doing this?" Eldris inquired. They all turned to face Gustav. "All right, sure. Let's do it," Gustav stated before sitting at his usual spot in the control room. Set a course for Nereus Sector. Back at the site of the recent devastating attack, a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen shadows. A remarkable change was unfolding. Amid the debris and the silence of dead space, a figure that had been motionless among the scattered remains of the destroyed prison transport began to stir. The figure was enshrouded in a tattered uniform, the fabric scorched and torn from the violent events that had led to the vessel's demise. The interior was a grisly display, the walls and ceilings charred black, the metal warped from intense heat. It was clear that whatever had occurred there had unleashed catastrophic energies, far beyond ordinary weaponry. The corridors of the space transport vessel were narrow and claustrophobic, designed for functionality over comfort, typical of military-grade transports. As they advanced, scorch marks scored the walls, and in some areas half-burnt corpses were melded grotesquely with the ship's superstructure, their faces locked in expressions of agony, their skin blackened to the bone. Some of these burns suggest an explosion of immense heat from the inside, Eldris observed, his voice echoing slightly in the hollow space. Look at the blast patterns. They radiate outward from the ship's core. Endrick nodded in agreement. The internal defenses would have contained any external attack. This was something else, something from within. As they navigated through the debris-strewn hallways, the silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft crunch of their boots on fragments of metal and ash. Suddenly, Rhea paused, his sight settling on a figure slumped against the bulkhead. It was a guard, one of the ship's crew, by the look of his uniform. Despite the severe burns that charred his blue skin, a testament to his alien heritage, his chest rose and fell weakly, the barest hint of life. "He's still alive!" he exclaimed, rushing to his side. Rhea carefully turned him over to assess his condition better. The guard's uniform was a patchwork of charred fabric and melted synthetics, the emblem of the security firm barely distinguishable. His features, distinctly Thelmarian, were resilient yet clearly ravaged by the event. The Thelmarian species were known for their thick skin and robust physiques, characteristics that had possibly saved his life amid such devastation. Gustav squatted beside Rhea, examining the guard. "Can you hear me?" he asked, gently tapping the guard's face. The guard's eyes fluttered open, his gaze unfocused, pain flickering across his features. "Ryan." The guard murmured hoarsely, the effort to speak seeming to drain his remaining strength before his eyes rolled back, and he passed out again. "Ryan? What does that mean?" Eldris questioned, looking over to Gustav for theories. "Could be a name, a place, or something else we're not aware of," Gustav mused, his mind racing through possibilities. "We should get him back to our ship." Endrick suggested. All right, Gustav agreed, seeing as there was no other way the guard could be saved. He would die if they just left him there. With the guard secured on Endrick's shoulder, they made their way back to their ship. The damage to the vessel, the nature of the guard's injuries, and his cryptic last word before losing consciousness all pointed to a mystery that was deepening by the moment. Endrick checked for any other survivors, but they discovered that only the guard was alive. Many prisoners in cells were burnt to a crisp as well. Whatever happened on that transport ship wasn't an accident. It was deliberate and powerful enough to bypass all their internal defenses, Gustav stated upon their arrival back on the ship. "We need to figure out who or what Ryan is," Rhea added. "It isn't really our place to do that. But I am okay with helping the guard to recover," Gustav voiced while placing some healing medication in the mouth of the guard. "And we need to be on guard. If something on that ship could cause this much destruction, it's not something we want to encounter unprepared," Eldris chipped in. "Which is why I believe we should find out what Ryan is so we won't get thrown into the unexpected," Endrick added. Gustav also saw sense in what they said and agreed that they would ask the guard some questions when he came to. However, at the time, they needed to continue their journey. After several hours of cruising away from the haunting wreckage, the tranquility of space enveloped their spacecraft. Gustav had resolved to drop the injured guard off at the nearest habitable planet, believing that it would spare them any further complications. However, his plans quickly changed when the guard regained consciousness sooner than expected. Endrick's voice cut through the ship's intercom. "He's awake!" The group converged on the medical bay, where the guard was hooked up to various monitors and 4 lines, his burnt skin treated with regenerative gels. The relief of consciousness brought a flicker of urgency to his eyes as he scanned the room, registering the faces of his unexpected saviors. Gustav approached the medical bed, his expression one of cautious concern. "You're awake. That's good. Can you tell us what happened on your ship?" The guard's voice was weak, but filled with a grave urgency. "Ryan!" he muttered again, the word resonant with dread. Rhea stepped forward. "You said that before. What is Ryan? Is it a person?" The guard shook his head slowly, his breath laboring with each word. "Ryan, it's not a place. It's a rare mineral. We were transporting it when one of the prisoners stole it." Gustav's brow furrowed deeply. A prisoner hijacked an entire vessel for a mineral? What's so special about this, Ryan? "It's not just any mineral," the guard continued, his voice gaining strength from his urgency. "Ryan is an absorbent. It takes whatever it gets and magnifies it. It's incredibly valuable and dangerous in the wrong hands. The prisoner who stole it. She planned her capture and transport just to get close to it." Endrick interjected. "Who is this prisoner? And where might she have taken the Ryan now?" The guard's eyes were haunted as he recalled the events. "Her name is Karis. She's a Zeltharian, known for her cunning and ruthlessness. She has ties to several outlaw factions across the quadrant." Falco, leaning against a console, crossed his arms. "Zeltharians, huh? Slippery folks. Any idea where she might head with such a prize?" The guard winced as he shifted slightly, pain flaring across his features. "She mentioned the Nereus sector once. It is where she grew up, and she is said to despise its existence." Endrick instructed the ship's artificial intelligence. "AI, display every data available on the Nereus sector." The air above the console shimmered as a detailed holographic image materialized. The Nereus sector spun slowly in front of them, a massive artificial orbital body, its architecture a patchwork of scavenged spaceship parts and makeshift habitats. It looked like a pirate's haven floating in space, lit by neon glows from numerous sketchy establishments. Chapter 1490, 3 Top Floor Infiltration. Chapter 1490, 3 Top Floor Infiltration. Author's note. Unedited chapter taking him by force? The Earth is amongst the Alliance leaders, so wouldn't this cause an internal issue? Eldris voiced thoughtfully. Endrick nodded in agreement. Both sides have selfish motives as regards to this situation. However, I wouldn't want a case where conflict breaks out and Rhea gets caught in the middle. We need to find a way to solve this quietly. He looked towards them with determination in his eyes. Then we need to come up with a new plan. He stood up and grabbed a small device from his desk. "Let me show you something," he said, activating the device. A series of holographic images and videos began to play, filling the room with scenes from Gustav's activities this past year. The first hologram showed Gustav saving a group of stranded aliens from a collapsing space station. Another depicted him relocating an entire planet out of orbit. Another showed him engaging sea filing. Another showed him on planet Vespa. The scenes continued, each one showcasing Gustav's heroic deeds in different locations outside of Earth. "These are just a few of the things Gustav has done in the past year," E said, his voice filled with admiration. "My initial plan was to present all this evidence to the MBO to advocate for Gustav's innocence and clear his name as a universal fugitive." Eldris watched the holograms with a thoughtful expression. "This is compelling evidence, E. But you mentioned there was one last piece you needed to prove, that Gustav isn't affiliated with the Gustavo Alliance. E nodded. Exactly. That's why Alevra went off-planet. She's gathering concrete evidence to show that Gustav has no ties to the Gustavo Alliance. With her findings and the evidence we already have, I believe we can clear Gustav's name and secure Rias' release. Falco crossed his arms, a skeptical look on his face. It's a good plan, E, but the last part is a long shot. Finding definitive proof that Gustav isn't connected to the Alliance could take too long, if it is even successful at all. E sighed. I know. That's why I said we will need a new plan. Eldris leaned forward, his eyes focused. We talked about finding the location of the Alliance earlier. Maybe that's our best option. E looked at him, curiosity piqued. Are you suggesting we infiltrate the Alliance and break Ria out? Falco nodded confidently. It seems like the best option we have. E considered the idea for a moment. If we do that, it could de-escalate the conflict. But finding the Alliance's location is almost impossible. Only the Grand Commanders and General Chell know where it is. Endrix spoke up with a calm and measured voice. Even if we find the location, getting in and out without being noticed would be extremely difficult. But right now, we need to focus on one thing at a time. Our priority should be getting information about the location. They brainstormed ideas, and the tension in the room rose as they discussed various strategies. E glanced at them, a hint of a smile on his face. You know, there is one person who might be able to help us, Commander Xanatus. He's the only high-ranking officer who's been on our side so far. Eldris nodded. I remember he is close with Gustav. Commander Xanatus could be our key to getting the information we need. Endrick added, but we can't just ask Commander Xanatus to get the information, because it might get suspicious if he asks General Chell out of the blue. We need to come up with a way he can get it without being SUS. E looked around as the plan slowly came together in his mind. We need to tell Commander Xanatus about our motives first. Falco leaned back. I agree. We could pull this off. E nodded. All right, let's get in touch with Commander Xanatus and start laying the groundwork for our plan. The next day, Commander Xanatus looked up as he entered his office. He motioned for E to sit down. Commander Xanatus, E began. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Of course, E. Commander Xanatus replied with a calm but curious tone. What brings you here? E took a deep breath and launched into an explanation of their situation, detailing the trio's return and their urgent need to locate the Alliance. He also presented his plan to advocate for Gustav's innocence using the evidence he had gathered and was still gathering. Commander Xanatus listened intently, his expression thoughtful. When E finished, he leaned back in his chair. You've put together a compelling case, E. However, locating the Alliance is no simple matter. I know, E agreed. That's why we need your help. We know that we can only find its location through General Chell. Commander Xanatus had a thoughtful look as silence ensued between them for a few seconds. Even I am not sure about getting the location from General Chell. He is not so foolish that he wouldn't suspect anything should I approach him. However, Commander Xanatus paused briefly. There is a way we can get this information. Although risky too, it has better chances of succeeding, he added. I'm all ears, Commander, E stated. The spacecraft General Chell last used to travel to the Alliance. If we can access it, we might be able to extract the last coordinates and pinpoint the location, Commander Xanatus revealed. E eyes twinkled in understanding. Truly, this could work. Commander Xanatus nodded slowly. The higher-up spacecrafts are kept on the floor above in a highly restricted area. Regular MBO officers aren't allowed up there. How do we get in? E asked, leaning forward. I can grant you access, Commander Xanatus said, but you'll need to move quickly and discreetly. If the spacecraft hasn't been flown elsewhere since General Chell's last visit, you should be able to extract the coordinates. However, if it has, this plan won't work. EE nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. We're ready to take that risk. Remember not to use your spatial abilities. It will trigger an alarm. From down here, I will interfere with the cams so you won't be spotted. Commander Xanatus gave E a stern warning while he nodded in response. Commander Xanatus proceeded to stand and walked over to a secure cabinet. He retrieved a small device and handed it to E. This will give you temporary access to the restricted floor. Use it wisely. Once you have the coordinates, return here immediately. E accepted the device, feeling a surge of determination. Thank you, Commander. We won't let you down. With the access device in hand, E made his way to the floor above, taking a private teleportation elevator that sent him directly into a pristine hangar. The hangar was a marvel of modern engineering, housing some of the most advanced spacecraft in the MBO. Each one gleamed under the bright overhead lights. E moved quickly, his eyes scanning the names and designs of the spacecrafts until he spotted the one he was looking for. General Chell's ship was house-sized and imposing, with the emblem of the MBO emblazoned on its side. He approached the ship and used the access device to open the hatch. The interior was as impressive as the exterior, filled with state-of-the-art navigation and communication equipment. He wasted no time moving to the control panel and accessing the navigation logs. His fingers flew over the controls as he searched for the last set of coordinates. The screen flashed with a series of numbers and symbols, and he quickly transferred the data to a button-sized drive. Just as he was about to exit, he heard footsteps approaching. Someone's coming. He almost instinctively opened a vortex when he recalled Commander Xanatus' warning. Damn it! His heart raced as he quickly hid behind a console. The hatch opened, and 2 MBO officers entered, chatting casually. They didn't seem to notice anything amiss as they moved about the ship, performing routine checks. He held his breath, waiting for them to leave. While checking, one of them began to approach the exact spot where he hid. This is bad. He crouched tighter, trying his best to be as silent as possible while the footsteps grew louder. Leo, see what I found! The officer suddenly yelled, causing E.'s heart to skip a beat. He steeled himself as he prepared to attack the 2, so as to make sure it was never discovered that he was here. Oh, a cherry lollipop? Who knew that the general had a sweet tooth? Officer Leo voiced, while staring at where the other officer pointed at. I did since I found it first. The officer snatched the lollipop from the top of the console and turned around. Huma, you stingy bastard. Officer Leo shook his head. Erasing mind began to calm as he realized he wasn't discovered. He nearly let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 1494. That's What I Like. Chapter 1494. That's What I Like. Author's note. Do not unlock after what felt like an eternity. The officers finished their checks and exited the ship. SS, when you turned me in, did you know I was carrying your child? Zenith staggered as if struck, his face paling. Our child? I didn't know, Karis. I swear I didn't know. Tears shimmered in Karis' large, teal eyes, not of sorrow but of rage. I lost our baby, Vlade, in a maximum security transport. Do you understand what that means? The conditions, they were merciless. No medical care, no compassion. Our child didn't stand a chance. Zenith looked as if he might collapse, his hands clenching into fists. Karis, A life for a life, Vlade. Karis hissed, her voice rising. You will pay dearly. Before the situation could escalate further, Gustav stepped between them, his demeanor authoritative yet calm. No one is paying anything until we sort out the situation with Orion. Where is it, Karis? Karis turned her gaze to Gustav, her expression shifting to one of mocking amusement. She laughed, a sound that echoed eerily against the metal walls. The Ryan? Oh, it's not with me. Gustav frowned, his patience thinning. What do you mean by it's not with you? Her laughter grew louder, more unhinged, as she looked around at the bewildered faces. Then, abruptly, she stopped, her expression settling into a crazed calm. That's all you get from me. Gustav studied her, a sense of unease growing within him. Her laughter had been too raw, too deranged. It was clear that whatever had happened to the Ryan, it was a piece of this puzzle that was deeply troubling. Karis, this isn't a game, Gustav said firmly. We need to know about the Ryan to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. It's dangerous. Karis' lips twisted into a sardonic smile. Dangerous doesn't begin to cover it, pretty boy, but you'll find out soon enough on your own. The standoff in the warehouse seemed to freeze time as everyone processed the implications of Karis' words. The stakes were clearly higher than any of them had anticipated, and with Karis unwilling to reveal more, they were left with more questions than answers. Gustav turned back to his group, nodding for them to continue securing the area and to keep both Zenith and Karis under close watch. We need to figure out where the Ryan could be, who she has been in contact with since she is definitely not alone in this. In the tense atmosphere of the warehouse, where revelations and confrontations had just unraveled the complex web of their mission, the man they knew as Iram, still in the periphery of the unfolding drama, stepped forward. His movement was casual, but his intentions were anything but. I want to try something, he said, his voice calm yet carrying an undercurrent of urgency. Karis' reaction was immediate and visceral. Her eyes widened in recognition, and as she opened her mouth to speak, possibly to call out his name or issue a warning, but the man moved swiftly, covering her mouth with his hand and silencing her before any name could escape her lips. You traitor. You will show me where the Ryan is, Iram whispered in her ears. The suddenness of his action caught everyone off guard. Gustav, Eldris, and Endrick turned to watch, their suspicion instantly flaring up. But before they could react, the person they knew as Iram acted. He pulled from his pocket a small, reflective object that looked like a mirror. With a deft flick of his wrist, he tossed it onto the hard floor. The object shattered with a sharp clang, and from the broken fragments, a blinding flash of light erupted, enveloping him and Karis. In an instant, both figures vanished, leaving behind only the twinkling shards of the broken mirror and a room full of stunned allies. What just happened? Eldris exclaimed, his voice echoing off the walls of the now quiet warehouse. Where did they go? Endrick added, moving towards the spot where the two had stood, as if he might find some clue in the fragments that remained. Before anyone could process the situation fully, the sound of heavy boots filled the air, and a squad of armored Triton guards stormed into the warehouse, their weapons drawn and faces set in grim determination. The leader of the squad, an alien with a humanoid physique and glowing eyes with the insignia of a high-ranking officer, stepped forward. I'm Officer Iram, he announced, scanning the room and taking stock of the situation. This declaration caused a ripple of confusion among Gustav's group. Endrick turned to Gustav, his expression a mix of disbelief and frustration. What, that's Officer Iram? Then who the hell was? Gustav slightly raised a hand to silence him, his face betraying none of the surprise that the others felt. Our Iram was an imposter, he said simply. You knew about the fake Iram? Eldris inquired. Gustav nodded, his gaze steady as he looked at each of them. Yes, I had my suspicions. Yesterday, I met with a guard named Sale who brought me to the real Officer Iram. It was then we devised a plan to see what this imposter was really up to. He voiced while his mind reeled back to yesterday's events. We need to act quickly, Iram stated. He could compromise our retrieval operation. What do you propose, Gustav? Gustav leaned over the table, his mind clear. Well, this is no longer officially any business of mine. I don't like people thinking they've successfully played me for a fool. A smirk appeared on his face as he spoke with a cold tone. Let's set a trap. He believes he successfully fooled my team. He'll likely make a move tomorrow. Meanwhile, we'll pretend not to see it coming. Or rather, I will. Iram nodded, appreciating the strategy. And we'll be ready to intercept him when he makes his move. No. He has to believe that his move worked. When he does make his move, we'll let him leave with a false sense of success, Gustav stated. I have a feeling we'll meet Karis tomorrow. If this plays out as planned, everything will be revealed and the Ryan, as well as your prisoner, would be retrieved with added bonus, Gustav added. But what if he gets away? Officer Iram was a bit skeptical about the whole thing. He won't, Gustav stated confidently. The plan was swiftly put into motion, with details hashed out and roles assigned. Triton operatives wouldn't be showing up until afterwards, but they'll lurk around the vicinity. This would ensure that the Los still makes his move without being spooked. Falco, leaning against a nearby crate, crossed his arms. So, this was like a sting operation? You expected him to make a move? Exactly, Gustav confirmed. We needed to know his endgame without alerting him that we were onto him. Ria, who had been quietly processing the events, chimed in. And all this time we were just waiting to see when Head reveal his hand. Clever. But how did you ensure he wouldn't just disappear with Karis without a trace? Gustav's lips curled into a slight smile at Ria's astute question. Tracking him conventionally wouldn't work. Eldris raised an eyebrow. Did you put some kind of tracker on him? Shaking his head, Gustav explained, no, a traditional tracker would have been useless given his abilities. The Los moves between a certain type of dimension that blocks such attempts. Instead, I used a more personal method. His life sign is imprinted into my god eyes. Life signs. Endrick echoed with a surprised expression. You can see life signs. Falco and Ria were clueless about what this meant, but Endrick and Eldris seemed to be well aware. This was an ability Gustav acquired years back, but they had no idea. Eldris and Indiak felt it made sense now, since Gustav was able to link them and pinpoint their locations back in planet Ozius. He never did tell them the details, but now they had come to a realization. You mean you can sense where he is now? Eldris inquired. Yes, Gustav replied. Once I activate life signs tracking, I will be able to tell wherever he is, feel his presence, and even see through him. Falco whistled softly, impressed. That's intense. So you can actually feel him? Like physically? It's more like a persistent echo of his life force, Gustav elaborated. I can tell you exactly what he's doing and see his environment through him. I can also feel the direction and distance, enough to track him down again. The group digested this information, the weight of Gustav's words sinking in. It reminded them once more of just how powerful Gustav was, but also made them internally question why he didn't use it when Falco and Angie got taken. So, what's the next step? Eldris asked, looking around at the rest of the group. The Los, the person we've been calling Iram, wasn't just impersonating an officer. He was one of the fake guards that infiltrated the transport vessel to help Karis escape. Endrick leaned forward, his interest piqued. So he was working with her from the inside. What's their endgame? He was. Gustav confirmed, his eyes scanning his group, ensuring he had their full attention. Chapter 1495 Arriving at Dietrich's Party. Chapter 1495 Arriving at Dietrich's Party. Author's note. Unedited. Chapter Stark stroked his chin. Well, they can't be on the ship all the time now, can they? Yeah. Hopefully they're fine, but it's possible they're not on the ship right now. I'll try again later. Gustav took a deep breath before turning around. Let's head out, Gustav voiced. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Eldris and E were making their own preparations. Atrahia City is about 30 minutes flight from here, Eldris said, checking the coordinates on his handheld device. We should arrive well before the party starts. He nodded with a serious expression. Since we are both headed there as MBO officers, we shouldn't encounter any trouble. Eldris nodded. I've already arranged for a private landing pad. We'll be in and out without any issues. He snapped his fingers and Vortex appeared before them. Or we could just use this, he suggested. Appearances in a certain fashion is sometimes important. In this case it is, Eldris replied. He proceeded to tell where his aircraft was located, and opened a vortex to there instead. They instantly arrived in the private hangar where Eldris' aircraft was stored. The aircraft had a shimmering blue exterior and seemed to be one of the most recent models from the leading technological group in Plankton City. Let's get going, said, climbing into the co-pilot seat. Eldris took the pilot seat and activated the controls. The aircraft's engines roared to life, and they smoothly lifted off the ground, soaring into the sky. As they flew, the landscape below slowly transformed from the urban sprawl of Plankton City to a more rural and scenic vistas surrounding Atrahea City. Rolling hills, dense forests, and sparkling lakes dotted the terrain, creating a picturesque view. Soon Atrahea City began to come into view, and one could spot floating structures in different areas of the sky. He looked out the window, his mind racing with thoughts of their mission. I think I might have the best way to make Dietrich spill more info. Eldris glanced at him. Besides soothing his ego, it's going to be more of a good cop, bad cop kind of thing. You soothe his ego, while I'll try to bring it down, which will cause him to want to mention more great things about the state of the Alliance. He voiced with a thoughtful gaze. When did you start scheming like Gustav? He rubs off on all of us, doesn't he? The landscape shifted once more, revealing a bustling metropolis with a mix of historic and modern architecture. The city definitely had a lot of cultural heritage and vibrant art scene, making it a fitting location for a high-profile event like the Welcome Back Party. Eldris guided the aircraft towards landing the venue, a grand mansion on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by manicured gardens and ornate fountains. As their spacecraft landed, they drew the attention of many who had gathered here. This was just the type of attention they wanted, so they won't be recognized as ordinary upon entering. Dash, who is that? Dash, I don't know, but it has to be someone influential. Dash, young Dietrich welcome party, sure has attracted big shots. Some of the guests at the entrance whispered amongst themselves. He adjusted his suit while preparing to get off the aircraft. Let's do this. Sure, Eldris nodded as they both got off their seat. As they approached the entrance, they could hear the lively chatter and music coming from inside. The party was in full swing, with guests mingling and enjoying the festivities. Inside the mansion, the opulence was on full display. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceilings, casting a warm glow over the elegant decor. Servers moved gracefully through the crowd, offering trays of exquisite hors d'oeuvres and champagne. Eldris and E made their way through the crowd, greeting a few familiar faces along the way. They caught the attention of some guests who were outside on their time of arrival, and some began talking about them. Dash, we have some young MBO officers here today. Dash, I think I recognize them. Didn't they participate in ISOP? Dash, that E has built himself quite the reputation in the MBO. E and Eldris smiled at each other as their flamboyant arrival was bearing the fruits they wanted. They spotted Dietrich in the distance, surrounded by a group of admirers, regaling them with tales of his time in the Alliance Corps. His handsome appearance hadn't changed, but he looked way more mature than years ago and a bit taller. He also happened to have a strong presence surrounding him, hinting at how far he had grown. They both decided to keep a little distance for a bit as they engaged in the party. Soon word about the arrival of 2 MBO officers, who were youngsters just like Dietrich, reached his ears. Dietrich was curious about this as a person whispered in his ears. He soon turned towards their directions. Time to put our plan into action, Eldris said, giving a reassuring nod. They immediately approached Dietrich, who looked up and smiled recognizing them. Eldris E. It's been a while. What brings you here? We heard you were back in town and couldn't resist the opportunity to catch up, Eldris replied, his tone friendly. Your father's party is fantastic. Dietrich's chest puffed up with pride. He does know how to throw a party, doesn't he? So, what have you two been up to? Eldris seized the moment. We've been keeping busy, but nothing as exciting as your adventures in the Alliance Corps. You've got to tell us more about it. I've heard it's incredibly challenging to get in. But surely not as challenging as the MBO, right? E added. Dietrich's eyes sparkled with excitement as he launched into a detailed account of his experiences, relishing the attention. Eldris and E listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions that steered the conversation toward the information they needed. So, what's it like inside the Alliance? E asked casually. I've heard it's a tightly guarded secret. Dietrich nodded, his expression serious. It is. The security is top-notch, and only the highest-ranking court members know the exact location. It's incredible, really, how they managed to keep it all under wraps. Eldris leaned in slightly. I can only imagine. It must be quite the logistical feat. Do they ever worry about breaches or unauthorized access? Dietrich laughed. Not with the systems they have in place. Plus, each officer's ship is equipped with security measures to prevent that. Only specific ships can access the location, and even then only under strict protocols. Besides, who would want to breach the Alliance? The panel masters are always present, and each of them are not too far from Jack's level of power. Eldris feigned awe. That's impressive. Makes me wonder how anyone could ever find it without authorization. Dietrich, enjoying the admiration, continued to elaborate on the measures, inadvertently revealing more about the protocols and security systems. Eldris and E exchanged a subtle glance, knowing they were getting closer to the information they needed. Surely the panel masters cannot be compared to the MBO finest officers. E perked his chin up with a tone of pride. Oh, they are better. They keep the place running when the MBO leader are not around. Since meetings do not hold all the time, the Alliance Council is not usually functional, but the MBO leaders visit every now and then for one situation or the other. Dietrich kept tooting away nonstop. E and Eldris continued their conversation with Dietrich, carefully steering it towards topics that might reveal more useful information. The atmosphere in the party was lively, with guests mingling, music playing softly in the background, and the clinking of glasses adding to the ambience. So, you also participated in ISOP, Dietrich said, a hint of jealousy creeping into his voice. E smiled modestly. Yeah, it was quite an experience. The challenges were intense. Dietrich's expression soured slightly. Well, participating in ISOP isn't as important as being part of the Alliance Corps. You know, real-world missions, actual combat situations, not just some interstellar competition. Eldris interjected. True, but ISOP does well to give us the opportunity to raise our planet's banner. Being a part of the Alliance Corps means you don't specifically belong to a single planet. Dietrich scoffed. Rhea also participated in ISOP, yet he's in Alliance custody now. Shows how much that competition is worth. E and Eldris exchanged a quick glance, taking note of Dietrich's slip. E feigned interest, probing further. Rhea's in Alliance custody? Where exactly? Dietrich, caught up in his moment of pride, nodded. Of course. He's in cell block Delt 7. They keep all high-value prisoners there. E and Eldris mentally filed away the information. This was a crucial piece of the puzzle. As the conversation drew to a close, Dietrich, eager to showcase his skills and gain more prestige, suggested a friendly spar. How about a sparring match? Just for old time's sake. It would be a great way to see how much we've all improved. Chapter 1496, Suicidal Mission? Chapter 1496, Suicidal Mission? Author's Note. Unedited chapter. Eldris raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? We've had quite a bit of training since our cadet days. Dietrich smirked. I can handle it. Besides, it would be fun to see how we match up now. Eldris and he continued to talk with Dietrich, sensing that their attempts to deter him from a spar were failing. A spar isn't a good idea, Eldris said, trying to reason with him. This is a party after all. Dietrich waved his hand dismissively. Come on, Eldris. It's just a friendly spar. Let's show everyone some real skills. He shot Eldris a concerned look, but Eldris nodded subtly, indicating that he had it under control. All right, if you insist, Eldris agreed reluctantly. Dietrich instantly had it announced in the party that he would be having a spar with some old friends from the MBO. A spar? This should be interesting. Let us see what someone from the Alliance Corps can do. Dietrich's father, Mr. Haddon, quickly arranged for a stage and a barrier to be set up in the backyard. The guests gathered around, curious and excited to see the spar. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Eldris and E had been suppressing their bloodline energy the entire time, so no one really knew their true levels. Dietrich, confident and eager to show off, unleashed his first gate, bloodline energy. The ground beneath him trembled, and a wave of power rippled through the air, causing the guests to murmur in awe. Let's see what you've got, Dietrich said with a smirk, charging forward to attack. At that moment, Eldris stopped suppressing his bloodline energy. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The barriers surrounding the stage shattered into pieces, and the ground shook violently. Eldris' bloodline energy seeped forth, spreading across the surroundings like an unstoppable force. The pressure and intensity of his energy were undeniable, causing many guests to stagger and nearly collapse from the sheer oppressiveness of it. Dietrich's confident expression faltered for a brief moment, a look of horror flashing across his face as he realized the vast difference in their power levels. Damn it, I thought my improvement rate was second to only that of Gustav. How did Eldris become this strong? He quickly tried to mask his fear with a forced calmness, but it was clear that he was outmatched. This isn't necessary, Dietrich stammered, raising his hands. I'm calling off the spar. The guests whispered among themselves, clearly impressed and somewhat frightened by the display of power. Dietrich stepped back, his face pale as he tried to regain his composure. E stepped forward, his expression serious. Dietrich, it's important to know your limits. Eldris is a beta, ranked mixed blood. Challenging him wasn't a wise decision. It was just to catch up, Thank you for the lesson, Dietrich voiced with a bashful expression. The atmosphere gradually returned to normal as the guests dispersed, though the conversation continued to buzz about the incredible display of power they had just witnessed. E and Eldris regrouped, sharing a knowing look. That went better than expected, E said with a small smile. Indeed, Eldris replied, but at least we got some information. We just need to make use of what we know. E nodded. Well, go plan our next move once this party is over. On planet Argon, Gustav stood in a secluded area, his body glowing with the radiant aura of the 3-in-1 golden form. His muscles rippled with power, and his skin shimmered like molten gold. Time to see what God Eyes can do in this state. Gustav said internally as he activated God Eyes. There was no system notification as usual, and Gustav didn't know what he was expecting, but it certainly wasn't what came next. His sight extended beyond the physical realm. In this heightened state, he unconsciously tapped into scenes that filled him with confusion and dread. The first vision showed Eldris, Falco, and Endrick engaged in a fierce battle in an unknown location in space. Blasts of energy and flashes of light illuminated their faces, twisted with determination and strain. Alien figures clashed with them, and the trio fought valiantly. The scene shifted abruptly to Rhea, restrained in a dark, cold cell. His body was battered, and his face contorted in pain as an unseen figure tortured him. The sound of his anguished cries echoed through the cell. The vision then morphed into another, even more disturbing scene. Jack, the strongest mixed blood, stood facing a formidable opponent. With a swift, brutal motion, Jack was sliced in two, his body falling apart in a grotesque spray of blood. Gustav's heart pounded in his chest as he watched himself appear in the vision, only to be stabbed in the chest by a powerful blade that created a black hole at the point of impact. This was something he had seen before. Gustav's eyes snapped open, and he staggered backward as the golden glow around him faded. He realized he had been in the golden body form for 29 minutes before it deactivated. However, the duration of his transformation was the least of his concerns. The visions he had seen were vivid and terrifying. Miss Amy's projection appeared before him. "Miss Amy," Gustav began with a tone of uncertainty, "I think I saw glimpses of the future. Ealdris, Falco, and Endrick were fighting, and Rhea was being tortured along with a couple more unsettling things. Is it possible that these are true visions of the future?" Miss Amy's eyes softened with understanding. "It could be. The 3-in-1 golden body amplifies your abilities, including your perception of time. What you saw might very well be future events or branches in time which might occur on this timeline or outside of it." Gustav's heart raced. "I need to contact them." Miss Amy's projection faded, and Gustav sprinted toward Stark's ship. His mind raced with thoughts of the visions, and his worry for his friends grew with each passing second. He reached Stark's ship and immediately tried to contact Endrick, Ealdris, Falco, and Rhea. The transmission failed to connect, and frustration bubbled within him. "Come on," Gustav muttered as his fingers flew over the controls. He tried again and again, but there was no response. Why aren't they answering? Stark approached, placing a reassuring hand on Gustav's shoulder. "Gustav, calm down. Maybe try again later?" Gustav clenched his fists. "Stark, you don't understand. I saw them in trouble. I need to warn them to stop whatever they might be planning to do." Stark nodded with a serious expression. "I understand your concern, but they might be in a situation where they can't respond right now." "No, you do not understand," Gustav stated while the image of a particular person flashed in his mind. "I can't lose anybody else." Stark let out a sigh upon hearing this. Despite how poker-faced Gustav tended to be, he actually bore a lot of emotional scars. If they are about to embark on something, doesn't that mean they haven't done so yet? Because if they are in the ship, they would have answered your transmission. Stark chipped in from a logical point of view. Gustav took a deep breath. "You're right. I'll just wait and try again later." The next day, Gustav continued his training, pushing himself harder than ever before. He activated the 3-in-1 golden body form repeatedly, trying to extend the duration of its activation. He was only 1 minute away from reaching the goal, so now more than ever he wanted to achieve it. In the golden body state, Gustav felt the familiar surge of immense power coursing through his veins. The golden glow enveloped him, making him feel invincible. He closed his eyes, focusing on Earth, letting his perception travel across the vast expanse of space until the blue and green orb of his home planet filled his vision. As he descended with his astral form, he zeroed in on Plankton City. From his vantage point, he saw the bustling streets, the high-tech buildings, and the people going about their daily lives. Everything seemed normal. As he floated through the city, an unexpected sight caught his attention: Falco. He was casually walking down a street, heading towards an apartment building. When did Falco return to Earth? Gustav followed him with his curiosity piqued. Falco entered the building, and Gustav, in his astral form, phased through the walls. He followed Falco to an apartment and was surprised to see Ealdris, Endrick, and E inside, preparing for something. The room was filled with various equipment and a tense atmosphere hung in the air. Ria was noticeably absent, and as Gustav listened to their conversation, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. "It is finally time for us to get Ria back from the Intergalactic Alliance," Eldra stated. E nodded. "We've been over how the infiltration will go. Everyone just needs to stick to their roles." Gustav's mind raced. The future visions he had seen suddenly made sense. The battle, the danger, it was all connected to this mission. He couldn't let them go through with it. Chapter 1497 Jack vs. Angie. Chapter 1497 Jack vs. Angie. Author's note. Unedited chapter pulling himself out of the golden body state. Gustav found himself back on Agon, panting from the exertion. He realized he had been in the state for over 30 minutes. It was a new record. Before he could gather his thoughts, Miss Amy's projection appeared before him. "Congratulations, Gustav," she said with a proud smile. "You've reached the goal. It's time for you to use the warp demolator." "Not yet," Gustav replied urgently. "My friends are in trouble. I gotta go." Miss Amy's expression turned serious. "I understand. But remember, you have a limited time." "I know," Gustav said while turning around to leave. "I'm headed to Earth. I'll use the warp demolator once I get back." Miss Amy nodded. "Very well. Be careful, kiddo." Gustav nodded with an expression of determination before heading to pack up some essentials. Stark wanted to come along, but Gustav shook his head. "I need to conserve as much energy in my dimensional bracelet as possible. I'll be going alone." Stark frowned but nodded in understanding. "Be careful." Gustav didn't waste any time. He input Earth's coordinates into the dimensional bracelet, and it began counting down. 2, 1. With a flash of blue light, Gustav vanished from sight. Gustav reappeared atop a mountainous region in Plankton City. The cool wind ruffled his hair as he looked around, taking in the familiar landscape. Without hesitation, he shape-shifted into a different look, a tall man with short brown hair and a plain face. He had also learnt to also suppress his bloodline energy, because with the aura he originally gave off, the entire city would feel that an alpha-ranked mixed blood was around. Satisfied that he wouldn't draw attention, he leapt into the air. "Flight has been activated." He sped across the sky as a blur against the horizon. In an instant, he arrived atop ES apartment building. Bam! He immediately manipulated his body atoms, turning into milky light particles as he phased through the roof and down a few floors, arriving directly inside ES apartment. The place was eerily silent. Gustav's eyes darted around the room, taking in the familiar surroundings. They already left. Realizing the apartment was empty, Gustav decided to properly spread his perception. He closed his eyes to focus on their specific features, feeling the energy signatures around him. He could sense multiple spacecraft leaving Earth's orbit, but his perception soon wrapped around a particular one. "They're almost gone completely," Gustav muttered to himself while his brows knitted in frustration. He prepared to intercept Endrick, Eldris, Falco, and E, who were flying away from Earth in his spacecraft, unaware of his presence. Just as he was about to leave, a sudden chaotic energy surged through his perception. He turned his attention to a particular icy region of Earth. This energy feels familiar. Gustav muttered while his eyes slowly widened. As Gustav sensed the familiar energy emanating from the icy region, his perception zeroed in on that direction. The scene that unfolded before his mind's eye was both shocking and urgent. This was the exact place where the Death Angel was being held and where Jack was stationed as a guard. Gustav's eyes widened in shock as he sensed a familiar, yet altered presence that had just materialized like a glitch in reality. Her body was half white and half black. Her eyes reflected a terrifying duality, and an inverted horn jutted from her forehead. The figure that appeared was unmistakably Angie in her altered form, with his perception providing feedback like a video recorder. Gustav could see that Jack had already confronted her. The sense of urgency spurred him into action. He couldn't afford to waste a single moment. Without hesitation, Gustav activated his powers and shot towards the icy region at breakneck speed. Lightning Blitz has been activated. The landscape blurred around him as he crossed a terrifying distance, scaling multiple cities in one fell swoop. Despite his speed, the battle between Angie and Jack had already commenced before his arrival. Jack's dark hair flowed in the icy wind, and his eyes were locked onto Angie, who hovered above the frozen ground, her dual-colored form exuding a menacing presence. Both their energies clashed despite having not met each other with blows physically. The surroundings were croaking in pressure and landscapes sinking due to this. "Who are you?" Jack demanded as his voice echoed through the desolate landscape. Angie did not respond. Her eyes were cold and devoid of emotion. In her hand, a dark blade materialized, its edge shimmering with a dangerous energy that seemed to slice through time, space, and reality itself. That blade, very powerful. I should avoid head contact, Jack said internally as star-shaped patterns began to appear around him. Flyish, without another word, the two clashed. Bang! Angie's speed was incredible. Her movements were comparable to line like blurs as she darted around Jack, delivering swift and powerful strikes. Jack, however, was no ordinary opponent, as she must have been aware of. He parried her attacks with ease, palms striking her wrist to prevent the slashes at close range before countering with devastating blows of his own. Bang! 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 The devastating blows were unable to connect as Angie's speed matched that of his, colliding with his palms and fists before they could hit her. Such collisions were causing sounds akin to explosions as the surroundings suffered the consequences from their relentless clashes. However, despite Angie's strength in this state, Jack no doubt had more experience and made use of it. He bound Angie's empty hand with his space construct, rendering it momentarily immobile as he evaded a slash and sent a fist towards her frozen side. Bang! Angie was sending flying across the air, but Jack didn't let her get too far before he performed another action. 8 star-shaped patterns appeared around Angie's figure, instantly boxing her in. Her entire frame was soon struggling to fit into the box of this space as it began to compress. "This feels awfully familiar," Jack mumbled. "Oh yes, we've done this before, but not in this timeline, right?" he added with a look of understanding. Within the box, Angie's face displayed an expression of struggle as the materialized blade fell out of her grasp and her body contorted while the space continuously shrunk. "Well, I hate to break it to you, but regardless of the timeline, I already gained experience from our previous battle, so don't blame me for using that to my advantage. This time I will properly discard of you," Jack stated with a tone of assurance. Gustav arrived at this moment on scene with a disoriented expression. He wanted to move in, but instantly stopped himself. "What do I do? Do I help her? But my vision. If I interfere right now, will it spell the end for Jack?" Gustav found himself lost on what action to take. "Don't interfere. Just look away if you can't handle it," the system's voice chipped in. The sight of Angie getting boxed in to the point where her bones began to creak and twist truly wasn't something Gustav could bear to see. "How can you ask me to look away? I can't let it end this way." Gustav wanted to interfere at this moment, but the system spoke again. "You are one that likes to use logic over emotions, right? Do you think Angie will be able to kill anyone, or you for that matter, if Jack takes care of her now? So you expect me to just sit back and do nothing? For the sake of everyone, Jack and yourself, yes." Gustav squeezed his fist so tight in frustration that blood began to drip from his hand. "KRRYYCHHH," Angie figure mangled, even more as the box grew smaller, and at this point, there was not even a single bit of space within Jack's construct. Gustav turned to watch as his heart pounded in his chest. He recounted all the memories shared with Angie from the day they met to how she began to grow on him. He recalled their last encounter before she was taken while watching blood seep from his skin. His heart ached. He had never felt this way before. "I can't do it," Gustav voiced before vanishing. Fwish-wish, he reappeared before Jack and held his outstretched hand. "You don't have to kill her," Gustav stated as his fist clumped tightly onto Jack's arm. "Huh? Who are you?" Jack questioned with a look of astonishment. "It doesn't matter. Why not just capture her instead of killing her? She doesn't necessarily need to die, right?" Gustav tried to reason with Jack, causing him to momentarily pause his actions. "What do you mean by she? That thing is an abomination that I will not allow exist on this earth for even a second longer, if I could help it. I am not risking the safety of this planet on the hope that this thing will stay captured. It is even more powerful than I remember." Jack waved Gustav off with a gentle yet firm shove. "You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.